Welcome to the Nas Daily. Well, actually, it's not the Nas Daily stream, so that's a good start. It's the Nas Debates stream. So basically, before we kick off with anything, I just want to say, after we've done the main bulk of the live stream, there's a few things I want to say at the end, just like odd bits and bobs, but I want to put them at the end just because anyone that like watches this stream for the Nas debate stuff, they don't want to sit through all that stuff. Cool. So basically, Nas Debates is like a side channel, I think, of Nas Daily. I'm sure everyone's heard of Nas Daily. The last week's video I posted was about a Nas Daily video that they'd done. And Nas Debates is basically a sort of side second channel where they have debates on different topics. So usually from what I've seen, the cringe master. So from what I've seen, they usually get like one person on either side of the debate, put a topic in. So it could be religion or whatever. I can't, to be honest, off the top of my head, I can't think of any more at the moment. But yeah, you get the point. And they have two people debating it. And then I think from the looks of it, usually what they do is they have like an audience who react live and give their opinions. So we'll see how it works with this one. So I don't want to do much more preamble, to be honest. We can just go straight into it. But yeah, basically Nas Daily, very big channel, do these debates. And they did one on whether Nas Daily should have kids. So let me just get it up. I'm hoping you guys can see that. So basically the situation is that, so Nas Daily is the name of the channel, but the actual main guy who runs it is this guy who is, I'm not going to give my personal opinion on him because it like, whatever. But like, it's basically the same as what Alden's is. So if you figure out what Alden's is, then you'll know what mine is. But yeah, basically this guy's the main guy, and it's him and his girlfriend called, I think you pronounce it Aline. And they have a debate. So basically, she doesn't want to have kids. He does. And yeah, that's basically the debate. So I don't actually see any more reason to draw out me just sort of rambling on like a moron. So let's go into it.
Aline, the truth of the matter is I want to have a child. And I don't want to force you to have my child. I really don't want to do that. So at the end of the day, it's whether I have a child with you or with somebody else.
At this point in my life, I do not want a child. So if you want a child that badly, I guess it needs to be with someone else. And I guess this is the end for us. The end for us.
Yeah, so basically, someone tell me if you can't hear it. Hopefully you can. Hopefully you haven't missed all that without the audio. But yeah, that's obviously like, a bit that they're playing at the start to get people to watch the whole thing. But I find his... like maybe it was just wording. You know how sometimes you say stuff on the spot and you don't actually mean to say it like that, and it sort of implies something you didn't mean for it to imply. But when he says like, I don't want to force you to have something along the lines of, I don't want to force you to have a child with me, weird phrasing, because it's like, well, you're not going to force her, are you? But I think it was just like a slip of the tongue, to be honest. We all like do it. But yeah, no one's complaining about the audio, so let's go.
Hi, my name...
Oh yeah, and I haven't seen this, by the way, so I'm reacting to this live. I don't know what either of them say. I just know that the girlfriend doesn't want kids, and the main guy does.
Sophia, and I'm welcoming you to Nas Debates! Today's debate is a little bit different than the usual. It's Aline versus Nusayer debating, should we have kids or not? What's a little bit different is that there is no voting. Today's debate is not to hurt or offend anyone. It's Aline and Nusayer voicing their personal opinions. And now it is time to start the debate. Aline, you may begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Aline and I have never wanted children since I was born. As a young child, I remember thinking, I don't understand why people keep having kids when there's so many kids in the foster care system that would love to be adopted. So my stance today is that we should adopt instead of having biological children, and that also having children is very stressful and difficult, especially for the women, mentally, physically, and emotionally, and I don't know if I have capacity to be in a motherhood role for the rest of my entire whole life.
Yeah, I thought that was a decent opening. So like, there's a few things she said. So the first thing I think she said is that she put emphasis on she's not she's not necessarily there was something she was saying personally. There was some things she was kind of saying more generally. Like she was saying more generally that we shouldn't be having biological kids, but she was sort of making it contingent on the fact that there's so many kids in the foster system, or like you know, in the orphan childs basically, or childs who don't have their biological parents can't look after them even if they're still alive, and like we should adopt them or foster them where we can. Like obviously 100% agree with that. I think that's really good that she brought that up, and she wasn't just saying it purely from a selfish perspective. Not, I don't know if selfish is the right word, but not like a personal perspective as in like, you know, I don't want to do X, Y, Z. She was more saying, you know, it is better to do X, Y, Z. So like that's really good. And then the other thing about how she said she's not, I don't know if she said she's not ready or she just doesn't want to be in a motherhood role for the rest of her life. I think that's kind of interesting because like upon first glance, it might just come off as like a sort of personal preference thing of like, oh, well, I just don't want to have that responsibility. But I think the part that she said about like it being for her whole life, I think is like important. Because I think a lot of people who will create other people kind of see it as like, okay, I'll look after you until you're 18, or at least especially in the West. I can't really speak for other cultures because I know other cultures have different, sort of social expectations of, you know, their responsibility towards a child and child's responsibility towards them. But at least in the West, generally, it's sort of like, you know, we'll pay extra attention to you when you're like a kid. When you're a teenager, you know, we'll back off a bit. And then when you're sort of like 18, 19, 20, you're basically, you know, you sort of should go out and do your own thing now. I guess it's changed a bit recently just because of the like economic situation. So at least certain parts of Western society, a lot of kids or a lot of people do stay more reliant on their parents into like their 20s and such, but generally it's seen as like, okay, now you sort of go out and do your own thing now. Whereas she's kind of highlighting the fact that it's actually like, well, no, if you create someone, you know, it's for life. You know, they don't just stop existing after 18, or it's not that your responsibilities don't stop existing after 18. You can't just sort of wash your hands of them. Do you get what I mean? So I think that's really good, because I think sometimes people will be like, oh, I'm going to create someone and then I know I can put in this amount of work, and then, you know, they then do their own thing, and if they can't really handle it, you know, they've got to deal with that situation. Maybe I'll help them out a bit. But actually it's like, well, you put them in the situation where they may end up being in those different sort of hardships or whatever. So you've kind of got to at least somewhat bear the burden of alleviating that, you know, even though it's happening to them, you're the one who put them in the initial set of circumstances that could have led or did lead to that. I don't know if that was at all coherent, but like, I think you get what I mean. And then some people are just saying in the chat, I don't know how to say your name, Brand or Brandt. Yeah, I know if some Scandinavian countries, children sleep with their parents into their late teens. Okay, when you say sleep with your parents, with their parents, I think you mean like live with them, right? Because like that could be misread. Meaning families stay together for most of their lives. Not sure if I'd want that or not. Likely if if I was in that culture, it would be normal and I wouldn't question it. But as an American, having a close relationship with my parents is odd. Yeah. It depends on the culture. Like, it depends on the culture what the deal is. Like, you know, the culture may not change the ethics of it. Maybe there's sort of slight differences in the views on ethics, like between people who've been brought up in different cultures. But like, the ethic, I see ethics as kind of independent from culture. So, you know, there will be some cultures that are relatively more responsible to what, like, given that they're going to be procreating, some cultures will be more responsible in terms of like parental obligations, and some will be less. But I don't want to go into that too much because it's not really the point of this video.
Nusair, let us know what you have to say on that.
Hello, everybody. It's no surprise. I would like to have kids. I would like to bring a human to this planet, specifically 3 humans to this planet. I think it's a wonderful project. It's a wonderful endeavor. I think there's nothing more meaningful than bringing a human to the world. And I would like to do that with a person that I respect the most, which is Aline.
And now, let the debate begin.
Oh, cool. So he didn't actually like use his full time. Yeah, I mean, all of his stuff was like, I want to, me. He didn't actually like give any. Even if like I think it's kind of delusional to say that you're creating someone for their own sake, but like like presumably he's the sort of person that thinks you can, but he didn't even say that. He literally only said stuff about himself. So, but to be honest, given the rest of his work, he doesn't seem like the most humble of people or modest of people, despite maybe the persona he tries to put across in his videos. But he still comes across as kind of like maybe a bit self-centered. Maybe I'm being a bit like harsh. I don't know. I haven't seen like all of his videos and stuff. I don't know like everything about him, but yeah. And then yeah, it's interesting. He wants to bring 3 people into the world like that. I used to be like that as well. I wanted like specifically 3 kids. And yeah, he said something else I can't really remember, but yeah, I can't remember. Let's just move on.
So Aline, I never thought I had to debate this so publicly, but I don't think it's a problem to want to have kids. I don't think it's a sin to want to have kids. In fact, I think if you have good genetics like you do, and maybe I have good genetics, I think we should populate the world with more humans that are responsible, that care about the world, and that can do great things. So I would like to have 3 kids in my life, and that's that.
I don't know what he means by good genetics. I don't know what he means by that. Like, how does he know that she has good genetics? How does he know that he might? What does he even mean by good genetics? I'm not really sure what he means by that. Yeah, I honestly don't know what he means. So so I'm just gonna like skirt over that. And then I guess one thing he did say, which is kind of coming from a non-selfish perspective, at least in his eyes, is that he was saying he wanted to create people, and maybe this is what he means by good genetics, even though I don't think this necessarily comes from genetics, but he said about how he thought that if those 2 specifically had kids or 3 kids, then they would be the sort of people that would care about the world and other people. Now, it's a couple like things. I don't necessarily think that caring about others comes from genetics. I mean, maybe well, to be honest, there's a genetic factor in like a lot of things. So there probably is a genetic factor in like how empathetic or caring you are towards others, but a lot of it will surely be environmental or cultural as well. So I don't think you need to create people for that. Like you could, so that is not wanting to raise people who will care about others and do good stuff is not a reason to create people, because you can do that with adoption, right? And someone might say, oh yeah, but you don't know the exact kid you're going to adopt, so you're running a risk. Well, that's also true of creating someone. You don't know who you're going to create, and it's like even if there is some magical gene that these 2 have that means they care about others, that gene is not necessarily going to be passed on to their kid. It might do, but it might not do as well. And at least with adopting a kid, if you want to view, I don't know why I'm doing that actually. If you want to view adopting kids as like which kid is going to be the most helpful in terms of progressing things socially or whatever, or helping others, if you want to view a kid in that way, then surely it is better to adopt, because you can be more selective about what the kid is. Like when you create someone, you're kind of just doing luck of the draw, but with adopting, you can like screen the kids in some way. I mean, this sounds kind of weird for me because I wouldn't adopt a kid for that purpose. If I adopted a kid, I would want to raise them in a way that they were caring for others, but I don't think I would necessarily like screen children or anything like that to make sure that they, have certain genes or whatever. I think that would be weird. But do you get what I mean? Even if you go down this line, it seems like adoption would be a better answer. And then I also just think that there's an issue here with the whole line of I want to create people to help others. and there's multiple things here, and I might forget some of them. The first one I want to say is that, like, presumably he wants to help others because there are issues in the world affecting others. The kids he has could fall victim to those issues, and it might be the case that they're more likely to fall ill of those issues than to alleviate them, right? So I don't think it's necessarily, you know, a good thing to put someone in a world with those issues so that they can solve those issues, so that they can participate in solving those issues, especially given that he's already said that him and his girlfriend or wife, I'm not sure if they're married, both seem to be caring people, presumably, how he's putting it. So, like, why don't I know they already are doing work. Like, I'm sure he donates to a lot of charities and he does videos and stuff, all coming from a good place. Whatever you think of his videos, I'm sure they come from a good place. So, like they can put in work. They are putting in work. They can put in more work. Like, if they have a kid, this will heavily suppress the amount of work they're able to do, and they'll have to offload onto other people. So I don't see why, if you want to help alleviate an issue, why do you offload the work and responsibility of that onto someone else who never asked for that? You know, you're putting someone in a situation where they've got now all these expectations to do these great things and, you know, make achievements and help others. You know, you're putting that pressure on them when there was no one ever to want it or whatever. Yeah, and there was something else I was going to say, but I forget. And then fucking hell. What were the other things I was going to say? Helping people. Okay, yeah, you won't necessarily know that they are going to help people. They will maybe fall foul of the issues as well. I can't remember the rest of what I was going to say. Another thing is that, you know, they may very well actually contribute to things that hurt others as well. So one, you know, easy way of looking at this is, like, I don't know if these two are vegan. I'm pretty sure he's not. I don't know about her. But, like, the kid they have could not be vegan, right? And then, I mean, if you're living a non-vegan lifestyle, it's probably going to be pretty fucking impossible for you to make up for the harm that you've caused, right? Like, the amount of animals that people pay to be tortured and killed, even though they don't see it because they pay for it to be done behind closed doors, but the amount of, like, pain and suffering and torture that the everyday person is responsible for is massive. So I'm not necessarily convinced that, you know, if they have a kid, and I'm not actually convinced if the kid is vegan that they're going to be doing a net good, if you want to view the kids in that way, on how much impact they have on the rest of the world. I'm not even necessarily sure, like, a vegan kid would do that as well. It depends on so many factors. You can't be sure on these things. Yeah, and there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot. But before we go on, people have been talking in the chat. And then Jess has said, "Yo, Lawrence, just wanted to say thank you for introducing me to antinatalism. It's defo something that resonates with me. I've been going down the rabbit hole ever since I saw your Channel 4 vid." Oh, nice. Oh, that's really nice to hear. Yeah, I mean, that Channel 4 video was, yeah, it was, I mean, I already did a reaction video to it, didn't I? But maybe in, like, a chill stream one time, I'll go into, like, some of the background stuff to it, because yeah, it was some of the stuff that happened with it was funny. But no, that's amazing. To be honest, it had a bigger impact than I thought it was going to. I was at actually, I'll talk about this in a chill stream, because I don't want to use up all the time on this specific stream to do that. But yeah, like, thanks so much for joining, Jess, and I'm glad you saw the video. If you have any questions at all about, like, antinatalism or just the general topic or whatever, like, you could, like, my Instagram link is in the description. Like, send me a message if you want. Totally up to you. But, you know, you may already be a genius on antinatalism. I don't even know. But, like, really nice to have you here. I'm glad you found the video. Cool, let's go forward.
I think it's great that you want to have kids, and if you want to have kids, you should have them. But when you have kids, you cannot control the outcome. You never know what your kid's going to be. You know, so many religious people or pastors have kids, and then they're gay or they're transgender, and then the pastor's like, oh my God, what have I created? And, you know, for you, the equivalent could be that you have, you know, a non-progressive child or a Republican.
First of all,
this woman is, like, on it. Yeah, of course. Like I was saying before, so I won't elaborate too much, and she kind of summed it up. But like, yeah, I feel like people, and he's definitely one of these people, they're just so optimistic about the outcome of what they're going to do. Like, they think they're going to create someone, and some people literally delude themselves into thinking their kid is going to like bring world peace or something, or they're going to be like the next messiah. Like, it's literally ridiculous what people like think themselves into. But yeah, I don't think people realize the level of uncertainty of, you know, how this procreation game can play out. Yeah, I don't feel like we need to go into that anymore. It's kind of obvious.
It's okay to be gay, and it's totally okay to be a Republican. If anything, it's actually interesting. But I think that's the whole idea. We love taking risks. You are a risk taker by dating me, by doing your job. I'm a risk taker by starting Nas Daily. So having a baby is a risk. The question is, what is the percentage of risk in which the baby will go wrong? I think it's 3 to 4%. And I think you have a 96% chance of having a good outcome.
All right, well, I don't know where he got 3 to 4% from. I think he's just pulled that out his ass, so we'll just move over that. Yeah, he I can't remember the exact name of the logical fallacy, but he basically does one here where he basically says, like, I'm a risk taker, right? And I like taking risks. And he gives example of like him and his girlfriend get together. They're both taking risks by getting with each other. And he started Nas Daily, which is a risk. But like he then equates this to creating someone. But the thing is like him and his girlfriend getting together are two, you know, competent, presumably they're both competent, adults who have consented to do that. And with Nas Daily, it's like, yeah, he is a competent adult who's made a decision for himself, and he's taken the risk on for himself, and his girlfriend took the risk on for herself when she got with him. But like when you create someone, sure, you are taking a risk on yourself as well, because obviously you'll be impacted by like the creation of that new person. But like I would say the majority of the oh my god, English is my first language and I struggle with it so much. Like the majority of the burden of like that person being created is going to fall on the person that has been created. So you're taking a risk on someone else's behalf, right? Like imagine if someone said, I'm a risk taker, so I, you know, put some sort of drug in someone's drink one time hoping that they'll have a good time, but actually they might have an awful time. It's like, well, I mean, that's not really a risk that is you're in the position to be making. You know, it's not up to you whether you do that. You know, it should be, if someone wants to take something, that's up to them. Yeah, and it's like, you know, why he's taking a risk on someone else's behalf. He's just, I don't know if he's just like on the spot and he wasn't thinking clearly, or like because people make this argument all the time. It's such a dumb, I don't want to be too negative. Rectally sourced statistics. I thought Alden said radically sourced statistics. I was like, what? Yeah, exactly. He'll be risking someone else's life, and it's not just a risk as well. Like obviously, creating someone is a massive risk in many ways for that person, but it's also a guarantee of harm as well. Like, you know, everyone will have some sort of baseline level of suffering in their life. No one escapes it, but you are putting them at risk of having an extraordinary amount of suffering. But they will be guaranteed a baseline level, but also they're guaranteed death as well. You're not putting them at risk of death by creating them. You're literally signing their death note. Everyone who is created dies at some point, and you have no idea what their relationship is going to be with death. You have no idea if they're going to spend their life in anxiety of that death, because there are people who get this sort of like even more, I don't know if I want to call it irrational, but even more sort of visceral anxiety towards death than the average person. I can't remember what the name is. Yeah, and you don't know how they're going to die as well. Like they could die horribly. Like they could die in their sleep, but they could die horribly. And then Brant says, I'm in that Facebook group and I'm definitely at that lol. Oh, I don't know what Facebook group you're talking about. But anyway, let's continue.
I want to take that risk.
I think that any anytime there's a child involved, there's 100% chance of something going wrong eventually. Raising children is extremely difficult, especially on the women. My career is the one that will be affected. My body is the one that would be affected. I'll be honest, if I was a man, I would want kids too. I don't have to do anything except hang around. If I babysit the kid one time, I'm a hero. But being a woman, it's a much, much harder thing, and all of the pressure, emotional, mental, and physical, is going to go on me.
All right, I won't go over the risk thing that she said at the start because we've already done that. Like, I agree with her. There are risks and you can't control everything about what's going to happen. And then the second thing she went into about the burden sort of like physically and in terms of childcare being on her as the woman. I don't know if that would be true in their specific circumstances. Maybe they've already had a conversation about this that we don't know about, where, you know, they've agreed that if they did... Well, I don't even know why they had that conversation because she doesn't want a kid. Maybe she's just making a presumption. But presumably, given that he is, you know, more in the public eye, unless he wants to step back, presumably she would take the brunt of the childcare in their situation. But I don't know the specifics of their situation. But like generally, if we're talking about like men and women generally, then like, yeah, she's right. Like obviously all of the physical burden, at least of like pregnancy and birth, is on the woman. And then in terms of childcare, like historically and still today, generally, that like the majority of the burden, if not all of it, is on the woman. You know, there may be like specific couples will divvy up the childcare responsibilities like differently, so that there may be some couples where the childcare responsibility predominantly falls on the man, but like this will be the exception to the rule. Also, there's just like a biological element because obviously the woman would breastfeed if they do breastfeed, you know, because the man won't be able to breastfeed. So there's all like those things as well. So I agree with her, but I think maybe she was being maybe I'm a bit biased because I come from a Western country, so like I'm used to our sort of norms on childcare. But I think she's maybe being a bit harsh, and maybe she was making a joke about like if the man does one night of babysitting, he's a hero. Like I think they are a bit more involved than that, but I get her point. And then Sammy is saying her arguments are not necessarily antinatalist arguments. This is more like a child-free person. Yeah, I agree. I think some of the stuff she's saying is sort of straying over the line of child-free into antinatalist a bit, but very soft. But I agree with you generally. Yeah, she's not coming all across as like a strong antinatalist or anything. It's more like child-free.
I don't disagree. So
I'm also sorry I paused it in the middle of his thing, but I'm also interested that the environment hasn't come up yet because I know they're both like very into talking about the environment. I don't know how to phrase that.
I'm not here to tell everybody in the world to have kids. I'm here looking at our unique situation, and I believe we are able to have kids. Why? You have good genes. You're beautiful and smart. But two, we are able to get help in raising the child. Yes, I may not be there all the time, but we can afford a maid. We have your parents, my parents, friends. We have a great supportive community around us. It takes a village to raise a kid, and I want a village to raise my kid, not just you.
This guy, so he's not only taking a massive risk on the child's behalf by creating them and all of this sort of stuff, but he's also shifting some of the responsibility for raising them onto other people. Like I know that in like it's different for different cultures, but like generally, well, it depends on the culture. But in some cultures, like people will expect or at least somewhat rely on people who aren't the immediate biological parents to do some childcare responsibilities. But to be so overt about it here, just saying like, I'm going to have a kid, I'm going to do this massive thing, and then I'm going to put the burden of or not the whole burden, but I'm going to put some of the burdening of raising them onto other people who haven't been involved in making the decision about creating that child. Also, I don't know why the camera's just gone like dark. Hey, Mark's just joined. Nice of you to join. And Alden says she hasn't reached the end conclusion, but her arguments could lead there. Yeah, exactly. I agree. I just like, you know how he's saying like, well, you know, like we've got people around us, like friends and family in the community around us, that can help raise the child. Like, do they get a say in whether you have one? Then, like, you can't just assume their input in raising this child. Like, I know that. Well, actually, I'm not gonna like. That's a whole other thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like he just comes across as a bit arrogant and self-centered, and not really thinking about the consequences of his actions beyond how they impact him.
What about you? When you mentioned people helping to raise the child, you didn't mention yourself, which is...
Oh yeah, sorry to pause it in the middle again, because I'm trying to pause it at the end of each one, but about how he's saying like they could get a nanny. Like, I don't get this. Like, surely even if you look at it from like a natalist point of view, surely creating a person, you want to be the one raising them, or that's the most responsible thing. Like, I know that natalists and anti-natalists disagree on what's responsible, but even within a natalist framework, like, surely it's seen as a bit of a I don't know how to put it. I'm trying not to put it in a really harsh way, but it just comes across as a bit of a dick move to create someone and then not even then just be like, oh well, let's just hand them over to a nanny. Most kids want to have a good ongoing sort of significant relationship with their biological parents, right? Now that relationship may break down over time, obviously, like depending on certain things, but like when the kid is very young, which is presumably when they'd have the nanny, at least, partly, like that kid is going to want contact with the parent. I don't know. It just seems so arrogant. Yeah, I know. Maybe I'm not being coherent, but
actually my primary concern. So what's your role going to be in raising this child?
My role in raising the child is in the inception. And that's it. I'm joking. It's a joke. Yes, I may not be able to commit to the child 15 hours a day. I do believe in having kids and having a career at the same time. And especially for women, it's really important we normalize having both. Actually, what you're saying is very dangerous for women because we all believe having a child your life should be centered around your child. I don't believe that. It is possible to have a child while keeping a career going.
I think he strawmanned her a bit there, because he was basically saying, like, he was basically implying that she was making an argument like, oh, you want to keep women in their traditional role, you want to keep them in the kitchen, looking after the kids as well, this sort of thing. Because she was saying, like, if you have a kid, you should put a significant amount of time into raising them, spending time with them, having a good relationship with them. And he was kind of twisting it and saying, oh, well, you just want women to, raise kids or whatever. But she's not saying that. She's just saying, I don't think she's making an argument as a woman at this point. The argument she's making is just as a person rather than as a woman. And she's just saying, if you create someone, they demand X, Y, Z. Like, they have certain needs and desires that you've created. So, you should go to help fulfill those. And that, at least in the very, at least when the kid is young, that means spending a lot of time with them. I don't think this is a back to the kitchen, back to raising kids all the time days. I think he's a bit strawman there. And then Brent says, I suppose my uncle, dude's loaded because he's an engineer. Here's a maid to do the cleaning for his house. That way he can have more time for his kids when he's off work. Still not an excuse to. Yeah, true. Still not an excuse to. But I think what he was saying with the maid is because you're saying with your uncle that your uncle got a maid to do other jobs so that your uncle could spend more time with the kids. But I think what he was saying is that they would get a maid to look after the kid, which I think are two different things. And then Mark says, that seems like a way to burn yourself out, in my opinion, a wage slave to capitalism, seen as a virtue to have it all. There's a cost to trying to do it all. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like trying to straddle raising a kid and having a full-time career would be, well, I mean, think I'm never going to be in that situation unless I adopt a young kid and try and do a full-time job as well. Like, I'm probably never going to be in that situation, and I'm not in the past, but I can imagine that would be like a mammoth of a task, and you probably wouldn't be able to do justice to either task. Like, you probably wouldn't be able to raise the kid to the best of your abilities, which you should be doing. If you put the kid in that situation where they need raising, you should do it to the best of their ability, because they didn't ask for you to do it, you put them in that situation. But then if you focus on the kid, you also, you're not doing as good a job at your job. So it's kind of like, it seems like it would be hard to straddle those two things. And I think, like, I don't have the statistics on this. I'm not super educated on this, but I think like obviously with maternity leave, I think one of the things that shows that is actually the case, that it's really hard to straddle both, is the fact that women do tend to take maternity leave off, obviously to physically have the kid, but also time after to look after them, because it's very intensive and you wouldn't be able to do both. So they take time off work, which I think is partly one of the reasons why. Obviously there are like a variety of factors, but it also depends on the country. But the wage difference, if you take them in yearly earnings between men and women, I think one of the reasons that women's is slightly lower is because they take that hit of coming out of the workforce when they do have a kid in like their late 20s or 30s. So their earning potential goes down. But obviously that's only one of the factors. But like, all of these things point to the fact that it is really hard to straddle both. So like, yeah, obviously I think what you're saying is correct, Mark. And then Mark also says, also a cost to child's development psychologically. Yeah, of course. Yeah, if they don't get the attention they need, or the nurturing as well, and having a parent who's not really there is tough. Yeah, of course. If you do what he's suggesting and try to straddle both, you could end up, you don't know exactly how it's going to go, but you could end up really messing up that child, because you've put them in a position where, all kids when they're young need attention and love and respect and all these things, and you're the one who's put them in that position to need that by creating them. They haven't just magicked up out of nowhere, and then you've got the responsibility of like, oh shit, I've got to look after this person now. Like, you took the decision, you made the decision to do that, so it hasn't just come out of nowhere. And yeah, so if you've put them in that position, you're then responsible for their responsible raising. So, you should, if you need to, you have to sacrifice other parts of your life to look after that kid. If you don't want to sacrifice those parts of life, then you shouldn't have had the kid, should you? But, yeah, and then Alden's saying he was partly raised by maids. Yeah, I don't know what your experience was, Alden. Yeah, let's continue.
Believing something doesn't make it true. The truth is that it's much harder for women when it comes to children. The world is very, very slowly progressing towards equity. Even in countries like Sweden, I get messages from women who are like, here it's supposed to be equal, but even though I have a caring partner, the truth is the majority of the stress and pressure and work falls on me. And that's part of the issue, is if the realisticness of situations are not being acknowledged, and there's no clear delivery of what value you are going to provide other than hiring nannies.
Yeah, I think with the example she brings up of Sweden, and even in the countries that are considered the most socially progressive, there's still like an inequality in the amount of, at least in the example of child rearing or raising, there's still an inequality there between the amount of attention that the man or the father gives and the mother gives. I guess it really depends on the situation, because obviously I don't know if this is biological or social. I presume it's both. I don't know which one has a stronger factor. I would guess maybe biological, but I'm not going to say that too strongly because I don't know. But raising a kid, generally it would, presumably, even from an evolutionary standpoint, it would make sense that women would have more of an interest in doing that. So maybe some of the differential between men and women's input is just that women tend to want to do it more. They're more interested in doing that. But it could also be the fact that our societies, our cultures have evolved in a way where the expectation is on women, and so the expectation influences women, if you get what I mean. So they feel pressure to do it, or they do have a genuine desire to do it, but the desire is informed by the culture, if you get what I mean, if that makes sense. So I think maybe she was making the point as in she was maybe erring on the side of like of the pressure, but I think there are multiple factors. But I 100% agree with her. Like yeah, like the burden is still, even in the most like socially progressive or however you want to put it countries, the burden is still predominantly on women, from my understanding anyway. I haven't seen any studies or anything. But
First of all, dating me should be clear that anything I get my head into, I want to micromanage it. I want to make sure it's perfect. From a video to a company to a trip to a relationship.
this is I mean, micromanaging a relationship sounds kind of weird. It's not the same as a video, because a video isn't like a sentient being with their own interests, right? Whereas if you're micromanaging a relationship, like there's another person who wants to have input. Do you get what I mean? So I think that's kind of weird saying you micromanage relationships, which I'm sure he doesn't actually do in practice, because she seems very independent. So just coming across in this video, obviously I don't know her, but in this video she comes across as very independent and not the sort of person who would let herself or want to be micromanaged. So I'm sure in practice he doesn't actually micromanage their relationship, but maybe he does, I don't know. But yeah, it's just weird how he's kind of flipped his tone now, because before he was saying, oh, well, I want to focus on my career, obviously, and we could hire nannies. And now he's gone to, or at least it seems like he's leading to, I would micromanage the raising of our child, which seems like he's just flipped from one to the other.
I'm not saying I want to have kids today. I'm saying in 5 years, I should be able to have kids, and I should have the time and the ability to raise those children. I think one thing that is important is I don't want to be 60 years old and just me and you and a couple of friends drinking wine. That sounds boring.
I totally see what you're saying, but I really...
Also, with the whole thing of like, he doesn't want to be 60 and drinking wine with her and some friends. I mean, he's kind of implying that the kid is then just a source of entertainment, or like a distraction from the fact that he can't lead a fulfilling life. Do you get what I mean? Have you seen the meme of like, there's a big vat of water and there's a crack in it with some water flowing out, and then there's this guy slapping some tape on it, and it's like the vat of water that's leaking is a failed relationship. The guy is a couple, and the sticker he's putting on, which is very flimsy, is having a baby. And it's true, probably a lot of people do that, is, they maybe don't know how to have a fulfilling life, or, they don't have anywhere that they derive meaning from, or maybe even on a very basic level, they're just bored. They don't know what else to do. So they have a kid to fill up the void, which kind of seems what he's implying he would want to do. And then Alden saying he wonders if this debate is spontaneous or rehearsed. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I would think that it was spontaneous, because I would hope that if it was rehearsed, he would have better points. But which is making me think it's spontaneous. But yeah, I'm sure most of what he said sounded better in his head. Yeah, I mean, it does with all of us, doesn't it?
I think it's a very unhealthy reason to have children, so that you have someone to hang out with when you're 60. Children don't usually want to hang out with their parents very much, especially when they're 60. They're going to have their own lives, their own children, and they may see you, they may not. You may get along, you may not. So creating a child, forcing it to live on Earth.
That's true. Everyone always assumes they're going to have a good relationship with their child. Like, you don't know how your relationship's going to be, which is one of the reasons why, how people sort of have a kid, at least in part, as an insurance policy. Like, they're going to look after me when I'm older. I mean, at least in my view, that kid has no obligation to look after you when you're older. You can't just put that on them. If they voluntarily come and help you, then, obviously that's a nice thing for them to do, but I don't think they're obliged to do that. But also, you don't know what relationship you're going to have with them. I mean, maybe you won't even want them looking after you, because maybe you'll fall out that much. I don't know.
And then expecting it to spend time with you when you're older is not the most kind and generous thing for this theoretical human.
She is so on it. I swear, she's so close to antinatalism.
I'm not saying 60-year-olds are not fun. I'm just saying we're going to be less fun because we're going to be tired.
First of all, we're going to be more fun when we're 60. Second of all, I don't look at raising a child as a 60-year commitment. In fact, I want to have an 18-year project. So the minute the child hits 18, they're out of my life. You're on your own, no more money, no more daddy, no more papa, none of that crap. Good luck. Make the world better, bye-bye, and then when you need me, I'll be here, but that's it.
That sounds like
So I think this is what I was saying before about you know, how some people just think like, you know, it's just, you know how at the start she said it's a lifelong commitment, whereas he seems to think that it's just like the 18 years and then maybe I'll help them out here and there, but I don't actually have any obligations to them then. I think it must be like a cultural view. I think it's just the culture that we're brought up in instills this into us. And like, sure, a lot of people, you know, when they get to a certain age, they want to be independent, which is up to them. But, you know, it seems a bit, if it comes from then, it seems all cool. But if it comes from the parents, it seems a bit entitled, like they want to have their cake and eat it. You know, they want to like create this person and, you know, put some effort in, and, you know, and make someone who has all these needs and desires, and then once it gets to a certain point, bye-bye, and I get to live the rest of my life in peace or whatever. It's like, well, if you made the decision to create someone in the first place, like no one was forcing you, you've got obligations now, and they run until, you know, well, either you die or if your kid dies, and then I don't know exactly. Oh, well, Brant says, yeah, plus if you think it's a burden to live alone in your 60s, then assume that's what it'll be like for your child. Yeah, exactly. So basically an infinite cycle of boredom and reproduction. Yeah, exactly. It's like a Ponzi scheme. And then Potier, I'm not sure if that's how I was thinking he was making a joke right up until the end. Yeah, I thought he was going to be making a joke as well. And then like no punchline came, so I was like, oh, awkward. And then Mark says, what if the child is disabled and needs constant care? Yeah, exactly. That didn't even come to my mind. Like that's very true. I mean, in my head, I had the whole time been thinking that the person they created would be like physically and mentally capable of catering for their own needs at a certain point, you know, and then here and there may need to rely on their parents. But that's very true. They don't know what sort of child they're going to have. Their child may be either, you know, physically or mentally, disabled, and you know, has extra needs that sort of go further than how, like the average person, or however you want to put it. Ethically, you'd abandon them just because they are 18, or is there a duty of care that extends to when you're older? Yeah, exactly. 100% agree, Mark. I hadn't thought that point, but that's a really good point as well.
what someone would say who does not actually want children. The emotions you're describing are of someone who doesn't want a lifelong responsibility. Just because a government has decided age 18 is when you're not legally responsible for a child doesn't mean that magically at 18 they're going to fly away. Some of them are going to face depression or anxiety and they're going to need support. Having a kid is not like bubblegum and rainbows. Having a kid is tantrums, breakdowns, crying, screaming, education. You know, it's another human that you're going to have to deal with, and you can never quit.
She's like really on it. She's clearly like very, I think she's definitely thought about, well, yeah, she's like definitely thought about this a lot, which is good. It comes across as if like she's like been really considered and thought about this a lot and thought about the needs of the person that she would be creating. And he seems like this really immature, self-centered, like teenager basically, who's just like, yeah, I want to do this thing, let's do this thing, and you know, we'll see what the consequences are. Yeah, it's just like the difference is so like striking. Like she is so much more ethically mature than him, or like morally mature. I don't know how you want to phrase it. Mark's saying, whoa, she's really on it. She's really on point. No idea who she is, but she's awesome. Yeah, so Mark, I don't know if you missed the start, but well, I mean, maybe you figured out on your own, but she's his boyfriend. So I don't know if you know Nas Daily, but Nas Daily is the name of the channel. The guy on the left is the guy who like started it and is the main guy in all the videos and like runs it. I presume he's like the director of Nas Daily. And then I don't know how involved she is. I've only seen her in this video. I haven't seen her in anything else. But so maybe she's usually off camera, or maybe she is on camera a lot and I just haven't seen her. But yeah, she's his girlfriend / wife. But yeah, she's like very competent in this debate, and he is just getting steamrolled. Like honestly, he really comes. I'm actually a bit embarrassed for him. He actually comes off as like really immature.
You are the definition of the glass half empty. The glass half full is having a kid, is companion, is excitement, is fresh perspective. It's a kid will teach you so much about life. It will re-energize you. It will open a new door in your heart and your brain.
This is all me. All he's saying is this is how I will benefit. I will get a new perspective. I will learn so much. I will get a new door opening. It's all me. He's just coming at it from such a selfish perspective, and she's just being so like mature and considered. Out and saying people tend to remember the good things as better than they were, and the bad things as not as bad as they were. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's true all the time, but I would say generally that's probably true. Yeah.
All know we need that door to open. So for every bad thing about a kid, I believe there is something good about the kid, and I think the net impact of a kid is positive.
I think for many,
I'm not sure. I don't know what he means by the net impact. I don't know if does he mean the net impact on him personally? Does he mean the world at large? I don't think he means to the kid, because he said the net impact. Like the way he phrased it sounded like he was saying it was an external impact. But also he seems to contradict himself. He said for every good thing there's a bad thing, but then there's more good. So, but if there's an equal amount of good and bad, maybe the good things are more intense. I don't know. I don't think he's thought this through, to be honest. She's not just seeing the negative, but taking into account everything. That's just being realistic. Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of people sometimes, definitely in my experience of having conversations on this topic with people always seem to think, oh, you're focusing on the negative, you're being really pessimistic. And I always just think I'm being realistic. I mean, I tend to focus on the negative because I think that is really the only thing that really matters when you're talking about bringing someone into the world, because of Benatar's asymmetry. But I also just think it like focusing on the negative more is just more realistic because we focus on the positive so much. I think creating someone has only really recently, maybe I'm speaking from ignorance, but this is my perception. I think creating someone has always only been seen in a positive way. Apart from recently, there's been a bit of a negative environmental tinge to it where some people view creating new people as negative because of the environmental impact. But that is probably a very small minority of people. And it's probably an even smaller minority of people that actually action that and don't actually have a kid. But yeah, I think because people have such a positive bias towards viewing procreation as a positive, if you even bring in the negatives, people tend to sort of be like, oh, you're just being so negative. I don't know if I was commenting there. And then Mark's just saying, I've got to head back to work, but nice to see you streaming live. I'll watch the recording later. Have a good stream. Yeah, no, thanks for tuning in, Mark. I hope the rest of work goes well. And yeah, hopefully speak to you soon. And I don't know if you're still here, but really good job on the child-free convention as well. It's really good to watch. Right, let's continue.
people having kids is a great idea, but I also think for many.
Oh, and on I don't know if Mark wants me to give this shout out, but it is a public video, so I don't see what the harm would be. But Mark recently did a conversation with Perspective Philosophy, so go and check that out.
It leads to problems. Many women, in fact, high amounts of women have postpartum depression. And not only that, let's say you have an amazing child and everything's great. Your kid could have complications, sicknesses. You're going to be worrying about them forever. I already am constantly anxious And imagining having a child that I have to worry about forever is very stressful.
So that's a fair argument. Most women do get depressed, or many women do get depressed after birth. It is difficult to give birth. Sometimes the vagina rips, as you have.
But you only know because I told you.
Yes, you have taught me that the vagina rips.
Yes.
That's why having kids should not be a forced decision.
Literally earlier he said he didn't want to force her, which implies that you know, if the circumstances were right, he would, or he even could do that. But maybe that was a slip of the tongue, to be fair to him.
Kids should be a conversation. If for you kids is a no deal, no bueno, for me kids is a no deal, no bueno, then at some point it makes no sense for me to depress you for the rest of your life with kids from me. It's better that we take separate ways.
My answer is that I would never want to force someone to not have children. If you want to have children, you should have children. But I would also not want to force the person who is going to take the brunt of the effort to have children as well. And I also don't think it's fair for a child to exist in a world where they're not 100% wanted and where there's not going to be 100% effort put into their life. And based on your lifestyle, I genuinely can't imagine you're going to have the capacity, time, or energy to invest in raising a kid the way they need.
So yes.
Yeah, I don't really have much to say in response to those things, so we'll just continue.
You don't want to force me to do things. I don't want to force you to do things. So what do?
I think we should adopt.
Okay, so we can start with adopting.
Only adopt.
A 10-year-old,
This guy.
a 6-year-old kid,
Why are we choosing the age?
because we skip the hardest years. And then if we like the adoption process, if we end up breaking up, I'll take the kids.
No,
you can be a free woman.
That's not fair.
You can go to Santorini and do whatever you want.
That's not fair to children. You can't give a child a mother figure and then remove the mother figure. That's going to scar them. That's the point.
Yeah, I think this guy, I don't know if he's being just kind of flippant for the camera, but he honestly just seems like very selfish and self-centered. Like he's only thinking about things from how they benefit him. I mean, the only reason he went to adoption wasn't because he wanted to help the kid. It was because he wanted to maintain his relationship with his girlfriend. Yeah, and even then, you know, he was saying something like, oh, you know, I will take the kids after that, which maybe he was just saying it in sort of like, yeah, maybe he was just, you know, maybe he wasn't being totally serious when he said that. But even when he was saying something which presumably was supposed to be a nice thing, like, I'll take all the responsibility on, like, he clearly hadn't even thought that through, because it was like, well, if you've raised the kid somewhat, she's obviously going to want to still have some input in that. And also, it's not fair on the kid. Yeah, I don't know. This guy is like he should do no more debates. He's not welcome in any more debates.
They will be scarred.
So I think what it boils down to, my honest assessment after spending 6 years with you, is that you cry if a cat cries. If a cat says meow and inside a dark room, you cry for it. So your problem is not that you don't want to have kids. You will care so much about the kids that it will stress you and put you in anxiety. I think that's probably the problem.
I'm sure that's part.
Yeah, and then Alden has just put in the chat. So when they were talking about not forcing each other into a decision, neither of them even took into account forcing the child into the world. Yeah, exactly. I hadn't actually thought of phrasing it that way, but yeah, that's very true. You know, they're so wary of forcing each other, saying, I don't want to force you X, Y, Z, because I know you're your own person with your own interests and desires and stuff like that, and autonomy, but just no regard for the fact that, you know, they're talking about something that inherently consists of forcing someone into a situation where loads of bad things could happen to them and they will eventually die.
I'm sure that's a big part of it. And then based on me and my nervous system and how it works, I would need a partner who I feel is invested and I can depend on emotionally. And while you have many amazing qualities, which is why we've been together for 6 years, I don't know if like emotional things are your forte. And that's where I would need a huge amount of endless support that would probably frustrate you. You don't even like texting me when we're traveling separately.
She's just honestly coming off as so much more mature than him.
Look, I need to be honest. I'm not going to put 10 hours into this kid.
10 hours a day.
Yeah, I'm not going to put 10 hours a day.
But babies need 24 hours a day. So who's doing those other hours?
We're going to have 5 nannies. My mom, your dad, my dad.
Where's the milk coming from?
Put him in a room, lock it.
Where's the milk coming from?
We can get a machine, get it out of you, and then store it.
Yeah, get it out of me.
I think he's maybe somewhat just being like a bit silly. I don't know if he means all of this like actually seriously, but he's actually coming across as a child himself. Like he's coming across of someone who, you know, they had this idyllic view of wanting something in their head, and then it's getting questioned, and they're sort of throwing their toys out the pram.
Exactly. I have to sit and have it sucked out of my body.
Look, like when it comes to involvement, I mean, I want to be involved. I want to be involved when it matters, but I'm not going to be there 10 hours, and I don't think, what?
When it matters. Every moment matters.
No.
When you're raising a child, there is no magical key moment that you're like, I was here, I showed up, I'm a great parent.
She's just so competent, mature, and she's so right as well. It's about the persistent effort you make. Again, I'm not speaking from experience. I'm no guru in this, but it's just clear to any reasonable person. Like, it's about consistent effort over and over again, showing up all the time for the person's needs who you've created. And he just thinks he can sort of like airdrop in for a bit, do something, go away. Like, I don't know, he just comes across as so immature. He's exactly the sort of, even if you ignore the ethics of procreation, he's exactly the sort of person who shouldn't be having a kid. And then Brent has just said, well, a mother spends around 20 hours a week pumping for breastfeeding, over 36 for the old fashioned nipple method. I did not know that. Well, I mean, I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know the exact numbers. So it's basically a part-time minimum, full-time if you're traditional.
And you disappear back into your own life.
So you want to, actually, I think you want to have kids more than me.
I don't want to have kids,
Because
but
you
I
want to raise them
understand.
so perfectly.
No, I don't want to raise them perfectly, but I understand that having children, it's not a chia seed pet, sweetie. You can't just visit it once a day and pour some water and say, I'll see you tomorrow. You know, that's 1 minute, okay? Imagine you're a child.
We are lucky to have support. It's not the two of us.
We're lucky now. There could be an economic collapse, there could be a war, and then we have a child or multiple childs and no money for nannies and no money for drivers and cooks and all of this stuff. And who is left to care for them?
Yeah, like, she's just so on it. Like, I don't even know if I can really add anything to that, because it's just, yeah, it's just true. Like, the uncertainty, even if you think you are in economic, you know, financial, social, emotional, whatever conditions now that you think are conducive to raising a child in a good environment, you have no idea, you know, how your conditions are going to change. Take a very recent example with Ukraine. You know, there were people still having, there were people still giving birth in the war zone, right? When they were being invaded, when they were being bombed. And what does this tell us? Well, presumably, I mean, maybe they did and they're just like wild, but presumably all of those couples didn't think that they were going to be in a war zone when their kid was born. But 9 months later, they were, you know, do you get what I mean? So it's like, obviously not every country is in the same situation, but that is just an example that goes to show you have no idea what situation your child is even going to be born into, let alone the long-term conditions of when you're raising them. Yeah, she's just so on it.
If the collapse happens.
And sorry, I think the stream is skipping some frames, so hopefully the quality isn't too bad and you can still hear me. I still don't know why it does it. I think it's because of overheating. So I'll try and fix that. Yeah.
Maybe even our relationship will collapse too. Like, or whatever. Everything is.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe your relationships will collapse too. So what the fuck are you doing? He's making a point against his position.
Point 20% of relationships end within 1 year of having a child. So our relationship, tenuous already, if we have children, will have a very high likelihood of falling apart. And then I will be the one for the rest of my life who said I had a child because my partner wanted it, so I said it'll be fun, and then we're living separately, and you are living your own life, and I am with the child, and you show up once a day to water it.
Again, I think you care too much. I do believe that a child that is...
Imagine considering bringing someone into the world, right? With all of the dangers and risks involved in that, and all of the needs and desires that they will have, and all the attention they require and love and all that sort of stuff. And then imagine someone coming to you and saying, you know, that's going to be a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of responsibility if we're going to do this well, you know, and we're going to behave in accordance with the child's interests. And then imagine saying to that person, I think you care too much. What a dick. Yeah, and then Brent's saying, bro, did this man just say you care too much? Yeah, I know. I mean, I think this guy has gone from being incompetent to actually being a bit of a bastard. He actually just... I mean, I don't want to judge him too much for this on-the-spot debate. He's on camera. He's maybe doing things a bit over the top to how he would. But this guy's coming off like a bit of a dick.
8 years old can actually... is much more powerful than you imagine. A kid is not a cat. You love animals so much that you think animals need somebody to help them every single day. But some kids after...
He's throwing animals under the bus now as well. Fucking hell.
6, 5, 7, 8 years old can actually be independent. Just give them YouTube.
I was one...
An 8-year-old or a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old can be independent. This guy literally has no idea. In fact, I think it's to the point where he must be not taking this seriously. He must be making jokes.
The 8-year-olds that was independent. My dad was at work all the time, and my mom was at work all the time. So, you know, most of my life I was alone as a child, and I was raising myself, and I would come home after school and nobody was home, it was just me. And while yes, I did survive, and yes, I did make my own food and open the door and take care of myself, I don't think that's a great childhood to be just left alone because they will survive.
That's the beauty of siblings. One adopted and one biological.
The siblings' job is not to care for the other siblings. The siblings want to live their own lives.
Yeah, now this guy is literally opting for like child slave labor. Like he literally wants to bring one child so that he can then employ, not even employ because he's not compensating him in any way. Literally use them to raise the other child. This guy's ethics are just so whack. Yeah.
Not free babysitters. There's a lot of like problematic thinking about children and family that, you know, is probably...
Yeah, I mean, at the start of this debate, she didn't want kids, but I actually think she probably wants kids less now, specifically with him, given what he said in this debate.
Part of the reason I don't want children. If you were standing here and saying, oh, it's a lot of work, it's a big time investment, I'm willing to sacrifice my career, I love spending time with children, I want to play games
So let me ask you this.
We might have a different conversation.
Are you willing to spend the rest of your life with somebody and deprive them of wanting to have kids?
Well, if you really want to have kids and I really don't want to have kids, I feel like
That is such a manipulative way of putting it, of framing it as if you're depriving me of this. She's not there to fulfill all of your needs and desires. Like you can like voluntarily got into the... I don't know how their relationship came about, but presumably he voluntarily got into this this relationship with her. And having kids is kind of one of the first things you talk about when you're getting into a relationship with someone. So he probably knew from the very beginning that she didn't want kids. And then he waits 6 years, so they're super close together. And then he manipulates her by saying, oh, you're depriving me of this really important thing that I want in life of having a kid, which he's even clearly not willing to invest much in anyway. Like, he doesn't actually really care about the kid. He just wants it from a selfish perspective. He wants a mini me that he can look at and be like, oh, look, I've created someone, and oh, they look like me, and oh, you know, I can spend time with them when I want, but I don't need to actually give them the actual love and attention that they actually need. Honestly, I'm actually beginning to really dislike this guy. In its way, it's a good video. It contains common ageless excuses. Yeah, and again with the self-centeredness. Yeah, exactly. This
Only solution would be some kind of open relationship.
Whoa, guys. I think this is a very good timing to end the debate. And now we've come to the end of the debate. Let's see what Aline and Nusair have to say as closing statements. Aline, you go.
Okay, bets on his being really shit. I bet you, well, I'm not actually going to do a legit bet, obviously, but like, I bet he doesn't mention at all the well-being of the child. He doesn't talk about the interests of the child at all. I bet you he just talks about it from what will benefit him.
So in closing, I do not think that we should have children, at least not now, because I do not think my partner understands the amount of work children are, not only for him, but for the woman, especially for the woman. I don't think he understands the toll they take on relationships and exactly how much work it is and how much love and care should be put into a child. They should not just be left alone to grow up like a chia seed plant.
Thank you so much, Aline. Nusair, what do you have to say on that?
Aline says, I do not understand what it takes to have a kid, but I do understand this. I understand that the world is too beautiful not to introduce humans to. There's nothing more beautiful than building a lifelong bond with a human. There's nothing more beautiful than teaching a child how a waterfall works. There's nothing more beautiful than me learning how to become a better father, because I do want to learn how to become a better father. This is a challenge I want to have. It's a conversation I am having, and I think in 5 years, I want to be ready to bring a human to this beautiful planet.
Yeah, so I mean the whole thing of like we need to bring humans to this planet, I mean this is just sort of like anthropocentric sort of drivel, like at least from the way he's putting it. You know, some people you know, like the transhumanist sort of crowd, like sometimes they will say we need to bring people into the world because humans are the only species competent enough to help wild animals. That's a different conversation, but like the angle he's saying it from is just clearly a sort of like starstruck, sort of gooey-eyed, rose-tinted way of viewing humanity. Like absolutely no relationship. Absolutely no like reference to, you know, like the way that humans treat animals and the way that, you know, his kid will probably contribute to that, all of these sorts of things. Yeah, I got nothing else to really say about him. He's just, I don't know, he just came across a bit of a scumbag.
More than welcome to continue the debate.
Cool, right, I think that's the end of that video. So I didn't want to make this live stream too long. I just wanted to focus it on that video, but there are a few things that I wanted to mention at the end. So the first one was, I am not actually sure if they're watching, but there's someone who sometimes comes and watches the live streams called Lalo Racer. And Layla Racer asked a question in the chat last time, and if they're not watching now, hopefully they'll watch it back. But they asked a question in the chat last time. I did see it and made a mental note and forgot to reply to it in the last stream, so I thought I'd do it now. And they asked about whether I've got any like collaborations in the pipeline or thinking about doing any. So I don't know exactly what they meant by collaboration, but in terms of like having other people on the channel, yes, I'm like still thinking about things. I've maybe got a idea for a series I want to do, which would involve getting other people on. But yeah, I won't say too much more about that because I don't really know all the details and I'm not ready to like share it or anything. But yeah, I will be getting like at some point I will be getting other people, like other antinatalist sort of people on YouTube, or not on YouTube, on the channel, and talking to them and stuff. So hopefully that answers that question. And the other thing I wanted to say before we end is, again, I'm not sure if this person is watching the live stream as well, but as some of you will probably know, I help run the Antinatalist Handbook. The link to it is in the description. And yeah, I won't explain the whole thing of what the handbook is. You can go and look at it through the link in the description. But there are different translations of it, and today has an addition to the Hebrew translation has just been made, so that now the Hebrew translation is complete. So up until now it had been just 50 excuses, whereas there are actually 60, and now all 60, so the final 10 have been added in Hebrew. So go and check it out. Go look at the Hebrew translation if you can read Hebrew. And yeah, share it around if you know anyone that speaks Hebrew and be interested in seeing it. Yeah, I will be sharing it. It's added, but I only added it earlier today, so I'll be sharing it around on social media later this evening. And yeah, I think that was the only update I had. I mean, there's a few other things I want to talk about, but I'll leave it till the next chill stream, which I'm hoping to maybe do this Friday, but we'll see. But yeah, I think that's everything. So unless anyone puts anything in the chat, thanks for watching. Let me know later in the comments what you thought of the debate. And yeah, thanks for joining, and I will see you in the next stream.